Today, this is more of a workshop that talks about seasons of life. It's more of a sociological, psychological, and spiritual mix of roadmap, so to speak. So this will help you kind of put the whole thing in the bigger frame and understand um, your own progress in life. So I'm gonna kind of do that, try to make it concise as possible. I think this church is very used to prolonged stuff, and all that. So I'm gonna just pack it in, all right, and then we'll reserve for tonight to continue on. So in life, especially Christian life, God deals with us in three large stages in life. Okay, and the first part of life, first phase, is called formative years. And second part is developmental. And I'm gonna put it there. And something here happens in our stages of life, and this is called unique contribution period. Now, some people have fortunate enough to have fourth quadrant, and that is, we call it afterglow. Okay. Now, the first formative years is actually, your family background, and then what we call critical incidences in our lives. Something happens to us as we grow, and sometimes you are born and you are rejected because you are based on your gender. The family's been praying for a boy, and you are the fifth girl in your family, and stuff like that, different cultures. The family go through family bankruptcy in your formative years. You suffer through major disease, accident, isolate you from people, different things. You have to move away and live apart from your family. You temporarily were given to foster care and so forth. And things happen, and the critical incidences form our worldview, the way we perceive things and relate to people. For some people, they go through a horrendous life experience and early on, so their view of life, the world, is very unfriendly, needlessly. So they are always, in a way, protective to preserving self mode, survival mode. And these things all happen, education background, of course, and all that. And basically what formulates in this area is mode of operation, all right? This is how we go about doing it. We become critical or very defensive. We become overly friendly, optimistic without warrants. Sometimes we become very negative and depressive, to the point suicidal. So it is actually combined with many things. I'm going to unpack that a little later on. So anyway, what you come up with is here with the critical incidences and the family background and all that, and some of your dreams are squashed, and you've been rejected, and all those things become part of your persona. Not only your persona, the way you connect with the rest of the world, right? So mode of operation basically is a tint of your glasses. It becomes rosy or it becomes dark, right? And so you may see some people and their shapes and whatever, but unbeknownst to you, this tinting is already become a normal to you, right? So when you see a person, I see this person in the shade of gray or dark already. But to you, that's normal. You don't pick that up. And so you relate to this person as accurately as possible that you understand, but that understanding itself is skewed already. It's tinted by your understanding and view of the world. That mode of operation exists throughout our lives. But here, something happens in your life, and you understand, oh, that doesn't work anymore, or that's not an adequate system. And you start develop your, in a way, better, enhanced view of the world. So your worldview is constructed here more deliberately. And your mode of operation often change in developmental stage by a mentor, by some experience, and what we call paradigm shift happens, right? Paradigm shift happens, and you understand, oh, the system of understanding, greed of understanding is not good enough. The way I've been doing business, is set for failure, right? The way I've been doing interview, I've been applying for jobs. Now I know why I didn't get the job. Kind of understanding, right? So you are actually growing and maturing a little bit in that way. So this paradigm shift happens here, and then all of a sudden, and this age is ideally 45. Some people are, very mature, and some people actually never get to this place. But usually by about 55, you get it, but no guarantee. This is called convergence. Why? Because your gifting, your personal experience, your family background, your education background, your passion, your talent, all come to a point you realize who you are all of a sudden. For this reason I was born. Wow, this is something to die for. That happens. Sometimes not as strongly as that, but usually, this is my game. Okay? So, if you can picture it, you are living your life to fulfill somebody else's expectation. Maybe somebody else's. Your mom's, you're trying to please your dad, your professors, what the society says, and whatever else. You are trying to fulfill somebody else's expectation. Come here. Actually, this begins way before, about 40. 40 is actually breaking point for a lot of people. You understand all of a sudden a word like authentic, or being honest, being truly you. Those things become very important. Now, I don't want to play somebody else's game. I want to play my game, who I am, what I'm called to be. And that kind of prepares your heart. And when you come to about 45-ish, I mean, I'm just putting a number there, but normally this is the ideal age. Because this actually enters into age of mastery. Right? So now, this, you understand who you are. So you have acquired skill, you have a natural talent, your passion, understanding of your family history, who you are, what you've been endowed with, and you start to appreciate who you have become. good or bad. Even the bad things, usually negative incidences, shape us more than positive. And so, uh, you know, all these things start to make sense. Not as clear at first, but at least you feel kind of comfortable as if this is me, right? And that will prepare you for unique contribution, at least in the kingdom of God, right? Now, this is beyond skill. Nobody can replace you at this point. That's why it's called unique contribution. It's not just knowing how to do it, what to do, but your life, your experience, not only work experience, but experience as a person, what you went through, divorce of parents, and the loss of a loved one, and loss of a job, and rejection by the loved one, and whatnot. All those experiences become who you are, and you are in a position uniquely to bring contribution to that need, and that's very, very fulfilling and fundamental in an understanding of who we are. Okay, that will settle us. No, we don't just move around and trying to find something and trying to please somebody or trying to copycat somebody at this point. We become very secure, right? A good and bad I have received from the Lord. And good and bad, including my mistakes, I have become who I am. Now, I find my niche, and then I am faithful in bringing out this unique contribution to the kingdom of God. Now, when you excel in them, you are given another phase, another avenue to make an impact in the following generation. There's a legacy making. You impart to people what's coming after. So I'm giving you kind of life map that usually this is what happens. I'm gonna break it down and kind of talk to you more about what happens to us, around the age 40. Okay, and that's the kind of thing I want to spend. So, any questions on this so far? No, explained it very well. There's no question whatsoever. Makes perfect sense, right? Okay. All right. With that said, any question? No? Okay. All right. With that said, men and women go through this stage differently. And if you don't understand this difference, you're going to fight against your spouse and people around you needlessly, and really get into a whole lot of mess that's not necessary. So I'm going to talk to you about this general things about this. I'm a baby boomer, meaning I was born between 1946 to 64. Anybody was born between 1946 to 54? Let me see your hands. Okay, we are fellow boomers. All right. After that, it's X generation come, and really messed up generation, and so after that, by God's grace, we have a millennials, and they're cute ones, they're lovely ones, yeah. But X generation is dark, so I'm gonna just talk to you about this mainly two generations, and go with that. When I was growing up, if you are employed by IBM or Sony or Toshiba for that matter, it's a lifetime job. Men or Kodak, Kodak's gone. Do you even know Kodak? Young people don't know Kodak, right? Huh? Yeah, Rochester, but that's too much information. It just, I was talking in my church. I was preaching, and I was talking about Kodak, the film and all that, and I told them even Simon and Garfunkel made a song about Kodachrome, well, they don't know Kodak, they don't know Simon and Garfunkel. So what are you talking about? And so, anyways, life changed quite a bit, and change is inevitable. And if you are not agile enough emotionally, physically, spiritually, then you're going to break. You're not going to make it. Because a change accelerated incredibly. And, this breakneck speed of change makes people very insecure and fearful. So let me give you an example. Those who are married, women, women are a little bit better at change than men, generally speaking. So men who are about 45 in 1970s, even 80s, when they're about 45, 50, they're expecting a couple of promotions from their own company and retire. That's the only thing they're looking at, all right? You got a gold watch and golden handshake, you're off in the pasture, right? Now, men these days, 45, they are not in the same mindset because they don't even know whether their job's gonna exist next year. They don't even know their industry is gonna exist next year in 45. 30 years ago, 45, you're set. You're gonna be a grandpa in 5 to 10 years, and then you're gonna be retiring, and that was it. It's very secure feeling. You can find your own niche, and you can pick up your second hobby or whatever else. Men these days are a totally different story. And when men cannot provide, which is kind of funny that police say protect and serve. That's men's makeup actually. God made us. We draw our identity by providing and serving and protecting. But when men cannot provide, our self-esteem gets a big hit, and we become, we don't know how to handle this. And that's totally another story, but that's the kind of things happening. So, and I'm going to just talk to you about general changes that's happening in our life when we hit about 40. And this is a very important talk. Actually, I did that, I had a breakfast, men's breakfast. We get together at church at 7 o'clock, and we eat bad food that our wives don't let us eat at home. And so we have a stack of just bacon and eggs and all this kind of stuff. And there's incredible joy. And we are doing something illegal, and we get together and we have this kind of talk. And the women, on the other hand, I had a women's talk too, and we have a high tea. Women are a little bit more sophisticated, so we have afternoon tea with all this, British thing, like Singapore and Australia. They all do this British Commonwealth thing, like high tea. So we talked about it, and it really helped them to set their kind of expectation in check and what they need to do. So I'm going to talk to you about that next maybe 45 minutes or so. All right. So this is generally what happens. Let's say, just put this as a traditional, cautious approach to life, and very careful and clear boundary, and like generally feminine, um, the characteristics. And I mean, I'm really generalizing it, especially this day and age, but adventuresome and risk-taking, and you know, uh, all that is kind of more macho kind of thing. All right, how do you spell macho? I don't know. All right, something like that. Okay, um, so if we put in a graph like this, when you raise children, actually when they're small, but pretty soon they start showing very different character, and the girls as well. And about this puberty and marriageable age, it almost parallel like this. We become very, what is it, compatible at this time. And then this goes very long, and then it start to actually, let me do this. And it goes like this. It goes like this. And when we are making family and making money and all that kind of stuff happens, and this crossover is usually 40 something. Now, when a couple divorces in their 40s, you meet them after a year or two. Generally, men are doing awful. They could be a medical doctor, professional, making a lot of money and all that. They're very popular. They're like Hollywood doctor or whatever else. They can date any movie star or whatnot. They're still miserable. Women, on the other hand, are generally having very good time. They're really thriving, and all that. And I explain to you later why that is happening, because men or women around this age, this not really concrete age, men become withdrawn and become very cautious, and they feel the mortality for the first time. Like a young man, they feel invincible. They jump off from the wall, the roof, and 10 people can break their legs, but they feel kind of they're okay. They're not going to break their legs, and even if they break their legs, it's okay. That's why they go to war. The bullets are flying and all that. It's okay. I'm not going to die, kind of thing. So the boys have this invincibility, and so these days, used to be 1950s and 60s, when a young man, like become 18, they become adult. They leave home. They have to get a job. They have to prepare for their young bride. There's a responsibility, and all that. So by 21, they're full-blown adult, right? And like adolescent years and clear adulthood, and then from there on, so from 21 to let's say 65, they stay as adult and they die, right? This no longer happens. Something happened in 1970s. And there's various theories and all that. So physically, we become adult at 18. But we don't really become adult by age 40, this generation. So this is what we call adolescent years, and this is the middle-lesson years. And this is when we become adult. We can drink, and I don't know whether 18 or 21, you drink and do whatever, but the responsibility and maturity doesn't really happen until 40. The reason is we feel like there's unlimited option for us to choose, including we can have baby anytime we want. That's why fertility clinics are making a whole lot of money. But that's not true. People say, I can have my baby at 53. Are you kidding me? And a lot of people believe that so they can put off a wedding and having children as long as you want. Same thing with the guys. They think they have all the time in the world. And so, in reality, people in the West don't really become adults in their worldview, in their values, in their behavior until 40. That's the crazy stuff. And they're irresponsible, and they're making risks that is unnecessary, and all that is happening. And that's why we have so much social ill that's happening there. So now, the reason right now is this. Men become cautious, feel like they're feeling the mortality for the first time. Oh, their friend just died of heart attack. Oh, and car accident, drunk driving, and all that kind of stuff. They're kind of beginning to feel this mortality little by little, And they become a little bit more careful, and by this time they lost some money doing stock and whatever else, and they become men. See, right now, especially men in U.S. have not learned to communicate their feeling or become reflective in their life. U.S. especially, much more than Canada, is very competitive. We enjoy competitive sports. Do you know in the universities in Canada, they don't even have a school sports team many times. They just have hockey team, ice hockey team. And if they have some intramural soccer team at best. They don't have like, this there's a football team and cheerleaders and going up and down. They don't have the school spirit and all. They don't have that. It's only U.S. And U.S. is very competitive, very business-like. You go to Europe, it's not like that at all. University, what's that got to do with sports? And so we are very competitive in our wiring. That kind of diminishes our time of reflection and also being in touch with our emotion. And because of that, we are ill-equipped to communicate in emotion. And men, when they suddenly dips down like this, they become reflective, and yet they are not equipped to identify and share their emotion. There's a frustration here. There's limitedness, ineptness they experience within. There's a lot of turmoil going on, and by this time, the parents of these folks are experiencing physical problems, hypertension and whatever, Parkinson's and whatever. And the parents, their health is failing, and that reflect. Oh my gosh, my dad used to be doing marathon and all that, and he cannot even remember things, and that is reflected with his own physical change. There's a limitness. For the first time, they're experiencing it at 40 usually, and afterwards. And they realize, okay, I cannot beat this guy because we are like we are to outperform other guys. That's how we are wired, And then you can never outperform 18-year-old in basketball court, You're 40, and actually I told my church guys, if you're over 40, I forbid you from playing basketball, because everybody has an ACL popped, and when they have ACL pop, it's 6 months out. You have, and then you know what happens? These guys are so active, so competitive, and when they're in the cast and they cannot move, guess what happens? They get depressed. They can really get depressed. And that gets into their spiritual life as well. See, all their life, I can beat you, is an attitude. You know, we call that Samson complex. More power, I can stay up one night and I can solve this. And I'll show it to you, I can do this. That kind of attitude, by age 40, and you cannot stay up night. And if you do, you can't think, right? And so now you are beginning to feel your limitation and mortality and all this. And the frustration and fear, downright fear, happens. So men usually it become a very contemplative sometimes at this time, and think twice about what they're doing. That can help, but it can be kind of negative in a social setting. Right? They kind of withdraw and sullen and because women, once again, generally speaking, our church has a lot of women who act like men and men act like women. But women generally process their emotion in a communal setting by talking. And the women usually bounce off their emotion by talking. Right? And then they say things, and then the other person replies, and they adjust their feeling and they say it, and come back and forth until they come to a very comfortable equilibrium. They feel like, okay, this is the way I am, I'm fine. Right? Men, we don't. Men, especially when we are scared or frustrated, we become withdrawn. And then our thoughts knot itself in our head by itself. And by the time he comes out and says something, that's a final thought. Sometimes very wrong. But it is our product. We feel that way. Right? And because this is think about it, husband and wife have an argument. And the wife say things they shouldn't say. Right? Because it's not a finished thought. She's just kind of trying to adjust that. You're a loser. And then she measures that afterwards, back and forth. She doesn't think you're a loser, but at the moment she feels like you are a loser, right? And then it's going to come back. But when the guy hears it, oh my gosh, you call me loser. And my mother never called me loser, that kind of thing. So, and then tomorrow morning, the wife is better. Because by the time she adjusted her thoughts and emotions and came back and whatever, so the final product of what she thinks comes out. So as far as the guy is concerned, the woman is very flippant and frivolous, in the way. But they remember the word you said, he's a loser. And deeply hurt. Because when guys say something, even the dumb things, that's final product. Because when we are trying to adjust our feeling and all that, that's why guys go to drink in the bar. You just go and drink, and then you're just sullen, or just go into the room and then just watch TV. You don't even know what you're watching, but you're there, and you're thinking, and all that. So guys usually process deep feelings, especially fear, by themselves. Now, at this time, therefore, it becomes more of that. And as far as the wife is concerned, husband is no fun at this time, right? And they're not active. They don't want to go out. They want to stay home, basically, kind of thing. And women around this time, they get the second wind. And women's pressure in life, men have to understand, women are much more insecure because society makes them insecure. Their standard, the men do not have that standard. Marriageability, fertility on top of everything else. You need to be good looking, you need to be a good pianist, you need to be a best lover, and you need to on and on and on. And the women's list goes forever. Guys, you know, you are athletic, that's good enough. Or you're smart, you make big money, that's good enough. So one, you can be ugly as a gorilla, but if you make a good money, you're okay. Or you graduate from good school, it's okay. You can be bad personality and all. Guys usually have one standard. Women have like 10 standards. And one of the most difficult, two of the most difficult ones is marriageability. If you don't marry by a certain age, what's wrong with you? Even when you marry, you don't produce a child right away or whatever in the expected time. Something's wrong with you. Even when you have children, if your kid is misbehaving, what is up with you? And it all goes to women. So women has a lot of stress, a lot of elements that make them insecure. Men have to understand this. Men have to protect women from this, right? And so the marriageability and fertility, this pressure, whether you are single or married by about that age, you kind of become comfortable with this. Or you are over with this. You know, you have a little children, school children still, but you're actually better handling it. In fact, a lot of women look for their jobs, re-enter in job market, or first time entering in job market around this time. Very brave, and they do that. And they actually find their own language. What I mean by that is their own way of expressing. And this happens around that time. And that's where women feel very invigorated and supported and like new experience. So women becomes adventurous and they take risks and they become more decisive. Now, so because they are caring and nurturing nature, they are less decisive early on. They don't want to hurt anybody, right? And they're considering many elements when they make decisions. They become very careful. And by age 40, in a way, they don't care anymore. Okay, so they become very decisive, and men become very indecisive, right? Because now they don't know. Because there's a competing thoughts and feelings they're all of a sudden in touch with, but they cannot name those things because they are never taught to name these things. And they don't know how to share because they are not trained to share this area. So they become very indecisive. And so the roles reverse in this time. And not only that, men begin to have more estrogen, right? The women hormone, and women begin to have more testosterone because menopause and all that's going to come later on. Now, so even the energy level and the focus, and women become more focused, and they find their second language. And this language of expression, sometimes is music, sometimes is gardening, sometimes is traveling, sometimes just bunch of women friends come together and just having just blow out. They have a 1 week cruise together in Europe and have just time of their life. And that kind of thing is very pleasurable for women, and so they actually really enjoy. And especially if you are, I'm not encouraging divorce here, but if you, just dead weight's gone, like let's have fun and that kind of thing. And that's why they're having crazy good time. Men begin to feel things. And when you become about 60, men really want to connect with their children. They never showed interest. But they want their children to be nearby. They want to share their feelings to their sons and daughters. That becomes very important to them. More than women. Women are okay with the chihuahua. You can have a dog and all that because they're done with. But guys now want their children around them, right? I do. I want my children around me. Well, it's kind of weird. We're too busy making money and then doing all that kind of stuff, and the kids are kids, all that. But now it becomes, I wanna communicate. I wanna share feelings with them. This is very important. That's a lesson for dads in early on in the 40s. Still, you don't appreciate your children much. Have that communication and sharing in there. Keep it up. But don't let them become your idol either. This generation, like family is everything. If you listen to Jesus, God's family is first. Biological family is second. Right? Keep that in order, then you will be happy. And when I have time, I'll explain that as well. But this happened. So women thought, wow, divorce is not a bad option now. No, it's not actually. And this thing tapers down. This is God's design, incredible design. It becomes this. Here, once again, they become very compatible. Actually, in 70s and 80s, they become very compatible. And this is golden couple. Now, some of the golden couples still hasn't learned to communicate. They still fight. But they cannot live without another. Their mode of communication is fixed. It's being criticized, critical to one another, and that's the way of showing love and communicating. So when somebody else will look at them, and you're still fighting, but they kind of settle down to that mode of communication. But usually, this is where the happiest. When you take this is not really proportional, but when you take a survey, people usually in their 50s are happier than the ones in 40s. And 30s and 40s are most difficult time in your life. Because God is working on your character as well as you have too many things on your plate. You're raising a family, you're doing this and all that kind of stuff. And because of that, it's really sometimes emotional fatigue and spiritual fatigue happens. But if you do not invest and put the foundation here, it doesn't all happen all of a sudden. Now, juxtapose the picture I drew before, the convergence and unique contribution. This is why role of a woman is very important, because the women usually find their language of expression. Sometimes they become a very good public speaker. All of us a very shy person, doesn't want to do anything to do with it. And now she has a very much a presence and very decisiveness and focused, present and all that. And juxtapose what I said before, men in this economy, in this fast-changing economy, men are more expendable than women as far as a corporate is looking at, corporation. So men actually lose or change their career and job more so at this time than women. Women actually many times become more stable breadwinner. You'll be surprised, in 1997, back then, already 40% of women made more income than husband. 1997, I'm talking about, 20 years ago? Already crossover. Right now, there are much more. I'm not just talking about white collar job. I'm talking about all across, blue collar to white collar job. It's like that. In this economy, both men and women, contribute to family finance many times. And you will find a lot of men after the change in the 40 and 45, they cannot really find their niche in this changing economy. So their income level and whatever becomes, uh, you know, 3/4 of what they used to make or whatever else. But they begin to enjoy their personal emotional life in different ways of relating to people and all that kind of stuff. So when you go through the phase in life, the mechanism that pushes you from one mode of operation, one lifestyle to another is usually very negative, unpleasant experience that pushes you over, like layover or long-term unemployment, or sometimes health failure, or even marriage failure, or whatever else. That pushes you over, and you have to scramble to find your place and your identity, and those things happen. But life is resilient, and our God is still in control, and so you will make it. In fact, life from 50 on, if you build it right, and this is most enjoyable time of your life. Most people are satisfied. But if you don't build this thing right, it becomes a miserable time of your life, and there is no strength to put it back. And so you need to be founded in faith, understand your psychology, your physiological change, and therefore invest in the right relationships, especially same-sex relationships. You need to pay attention to. You need to have guy friends, guys. You need to have a guy community, women community that you can communicate and share your thoughts, because we are so driven to opposite sex kind of thing. Like, what is it? The 7th grade, you already ready for dance, and everything is like sexual orientation. But life is not about that. And as you grow older, you prefer the male bonding, the brotherhood or sisterhood of sharing life without sexual tone in it, right? And that there's an incredible joy of just being, just being yourself. So in our church, one of the things we are really surprised in cell, we have homogeneous cells. So men, women meet separately because child care and everything else. And you cannot really share deep things. If you're going through bankruptcy, you don't want to share with somebody else's wife sitting there. Or if you have a marriage problem, you're not going to share in there. Or let's say addiction or porn or chemical dependency, you're not going to share with somebody else's spouse there, right? And so it's a very safe place. So it's not only spiritually and emotionally safe, and people also feel sociologically it's a very safe place. So what ends up is one of the funniest things we found out is these guys, some of them bankers, some are medical doctors, and all kind of different profession. But as a result of their friendship from the cell, these men in Orange County, actually they gather at the beach at 6 o'clock in the morning. Actually they surf together before they go to work. So these guys, some of them been surfing from teenage, some of them just picked it up, but they get together and they prefer that setting. So when I do like men's breakfast, they love it. They just come, like these guys barely show up in the service, eyes half closed. 7 o'clock, that's 9 o'clock and 11 o'clock. And 7 o'clock in the morning, they're there from 6:30. They're waiting. They're very, like a boys, really excited. They don't know what to do with themselves. And because this is a special kind of gathering, and we are not competing against one another, and this competition, I beat you, and all that becomes you know, um, we learn to compensate and appreciate. I was talking like this, and then Pastor Young from Philadelphia, I said, yeah, I have a story for that. What is it? And he actually plays soccer, men over 50, right? Men over 50, slow motion soccer. Right? And the thing is, he said this, if one guy scores, both team cheers. Like, and they're all happy, genuinely happy. Before that, like one guy scores and people get upset, and even the same team, and I should have done that. That kind of stuff. Over 50, any goal is just beautiful. And especially they know each other's story. That guy had a prostate cancer, and he went through surgery last year. Look at him run. They're excited. And somebody makes this beautiful play. Oh my gosh, that was good, man. It doesn't have to be your team. So what am I saying? In real sense, they really enjoy the game of soccer for the first time. Before that, it was a competition. It's my team who kicks it in. We have a more score than you. We can beat you anytime. It was all about them. I can do this. You can't. I can outperform you. Soccer was only a medium. It was a means to prove something about you. But when we get older, and when we get rid of that single track, sex, power, money, it gets lessened. It doesn't go away, it lessens. Then we actually begin to enjoy things in its own worth and beauty. We begin to see things in different angles. That's why you will see men and women, but especially men, pick up photography for the first time around 40. Now, everybody has a cell phone. Now everybody takes picture. But before that, this big, Nikon or whatever, because they have money, and they start to appreciate things. Framing it. So photography, what is photography? Is basically framing it, angle and frame. And it is kind of metaphor of they start to look at things and the world in a different frame and angle and appreciate it. And so that maturity actually brings richness in man's life, and we become more reflective and contemplative, and we are not brute force anymore. We kind of understand, okay, there's another way of doing it. Partially because we cannot compete with the younger men. And we are forced to think and approach it in that way. We become hopefully wiser. And women, on the other hand, find, hey, I didn't know I had this. I didn't know I was endowed with this kind of creativity. This kind of energy, this kind of passion. And that just kicks it up in that time. And so for men to kind of support so that she can catapult in a new level, and women to give a safe room for their husband to be able to find their grounding. Don't make them insecure. There are a lot of women become critical. How come you don't want to go out anymore? You're no fun. How come all that kind of stuff, and giving that person a safe place. You're elbowing one another in distance, all right? So, that, and so when we do that, even in church, there are places more for women to blossom, to come out, and do that, and setting a good model for younger women to follow, and doing all that, and the decision making of a church. It really helps to have these two mature genders and really put together. And it's a healthy, balanced, and stable church it becomes. I told you before, if this is not treated well, people become very depressed, self-doubting, and become jaded. A lot of people. And I see a lot of Christian men at this time it become. And the one thing about our race is this: when we become fearful, we try to control more rules and regulations. Don't do that. Don't do this. We've never done it that way, you know. And that kind of control, it kills the church and dynamics of the spirit. And so, understand this. And there is actually there's a diagram called the sexual diamond that actually talks about men and women become the furthest in their 40s. So it comes like this, and then it comes back like this in their comparability. So, it's just kind of as a pastor, I have to address the fact that unmarried women sleeping together and stop doing that. And also I have to address the fact that married people sleep together because they don't sleep together anymore, right? And these are two really serious problems. And in this day and age, it's going to create a lot of room for enemy to work. So it's a husband and wife, you are married, you're regularly having intimacy is very important. I teach that in our church. And you have to pay attention to that and meet the needs of a spouse. Because men are very sexually oriented, whether they doing all that or not. So you need to be able to understand that, because I continually get, because we have a homogeneous cell group, my wife takes care of the women's group, and then we have 4 coaches, 2 coaches for women, about 13 zone leaders, and then about 45 cells, and then there's a women's cell, and the men is a mirror about the same. And because of this, we get all these things. My wife processes it, and I get it, and we talk about it. And there's a lot of, especially men's side, is frustrated because the women do not, provide that in the marriage situation and all that. And those are kind of things we try to address within the church, because if you don't do it, this day and age, you're creating a lot of room for temptation and the men to fail. And that's why a lot of Christian men end up in pornography, and all that kind of stuff. And we don't want to open that door. So understand our life has God created us as not only spiritual being, but we are a sexual being, social being, emotional being, and all this. Understand that and appreciate what God is doing in your life. And as we go through the seasons in life, be wise. Be wise. And know that there's a crossroad like this. And prepare one another for this. And if you're already into this thing, just live with God's truth. But what I'm trying to say is, these golden years just don't happen just because we get older. This preparation and investment has to be in the right place. And your spiritual, basically your relationship with God and the community of faith is very important. Including appreciating people who are different than you are. It's very important. Accepting people that are different than you are. Right? And do not insist your spiritual approach is the way of doing it. There's a humility involved here. God is in control. And under Pastor Sam's leadership, I'm sure there's plenty of the leeway and room for you to accept one another and really to support and compensate one another in the Lord. And that's very important. So basically, because your church is, I think, along with the remnant, is next order church than us. We have the, I guess, older population in our church, and we trailblaze our spiritual life and set the tone for other AMI churches and similar churches. We need to be aware of what's changing in your life, because what is important to you, what is something that is so definite for you at this stage in life, and 15 years later, you may realize not only that's not the only way, but that's not that important, because your perspective changes. And therefore, having an overarching picture of our journey and understanding the foundation of the scripture and plant it, anchor it right there, then you don't get shifted by the the phases that you go through. And that's what I'm trying to say. And establish your marriage, whether you are married or not, and appreciate this change in your life, and welcome it, and be agile and flexible, so that you can really enjoy and live an abundant life. That's what I'm trying to say in Christ Jesus. Amen. All right, so that's it. Any questions? If you have any questions, I'd like to answer. And if not, we can stop it here and meet you in the evening. No questions? Explained it perfectly, and no question left. All right. Okay. Going. You don't have to make it up. Okay. All right.
So in the stage where the men are sort of moving towards the more cautious, more feminine point, I know you talked about sort of helping them understand maybe what's going on inside of them, to talk and things like that. How else could you support your husband, or even sort of challenge them if they're getting sullen, or is that even part of it? Or
yeah, so men in that way, in that phase, don't do well under challenge. I think men need a lot of support at that time, and like women naturally enjoyed having a community, a true community where people can kind of begin to share. We found that our young men is very difficult time sharing, so they have to do some activity. They either play sports or watch a game, and in between commercial, they say some deep things, like, yeah, and when the commercial is over, it's over, and then you go back to the game, and that's how men share. That's why I don't play golf, but I heard golf is so therapeutic, because these four people are locked in, and then as they walk, or they drive now, but as they walk, not all the way, but that 10-minute walk or 5-minute walk, they have nuggets of their emotions. They really become vulnerable. That's very safe, because once you get to the next hole, everybody have to drive, and it stops. You can escape if you don't feel comfortable. So having an escape route open, so that they can share, so men's community is not locked in, but have they can leave anytime they want type of community until they build the trust and be able to communicate. One of the things I'm really thankful to God is a lot of our cell, especially men's cell, and that at that age group, I cannot say for younger men, but men, went through. We have guys who went through a serial affair, chemical dependency, gambling. We are talking about professionals. These are like medical doctors and lawyers and all that. And we have, from rough, tough, guys as well. But they went through all this, and they become real, and they're really supporting one another. And there's a really they know how to resonate somebody else's feeling. There's an empathy, and they, in a way, they have really matured in the way of communicating. So I'm very comfortable if somebody comes fresh off the boat in that way, trying to learn new things and don't know how to share. These men are fatherly enough, even though they may be similar age, they can really unpack these guys. And that took years of self experience, and they feel they're healed and restored, therefore they can do that. So that thing doesn't happen overnight. It takes a long time. But I would say encourage the community, and where they can be alone, and they can begin to share and stuff like that. But what I hear is the golf course is a good place to unload, because you can share really serious stuff, and then if nobody responds, then you go to the next hole and you act if nothing happened, and there is the safety there, or go out surfing together. Guys need some activity, and in between time you share. You don't sit there hour and a half and you open your story. That doesn't happen with men. Men needs that, just kind of a little bit of distraction here and there between their deep sharing. Yeah, so I'll do that. All right. Any other things?
Just going back to the developmental, to the unique contribution, can you just talk a little bit more about just some of the things that help facilitate that paradigm shift and facilitate convergence?
Actually, that's pretty much what God is doing. So I think you just have to recognize what God is doing. You cannot initiate the process, so to speak. I'm not saying be passive, but proactive, in a way that when that happens, that you respond appropriately. But these things happen to you, like critical incidents. It just is part of life. You cannot suddenly have colon cancer and then have this thing start. So there are plenty elements in our lives that kind of put us at the next level. But you can certainly read some books that you start to recognize these elements. Making of a Leader by Robert Clinton could be a good start. And he's the one actually began that the diagram. Robert Clinton is the name, Bobby Clinton. But generally speaking, an age 40ish, look for a mentor in your career, in your faith. Pastor Sam certainly will be able to do it. But having a few mentors in your life, in your career track as a businessman, or in faith, of course, and having that will be very helpful, right? Of same gender, of course, and what they went through, and be able to share that. Yeah. But unique contribution, that convergence, is more of a very, I'll say, sacred moment for a person. You cannot, create that. It just aha moment. It just happens in a way. Yeah. So, any other people? Any other questions?